Hi guys, welcome back to Eye of the Beholder, where we look at 20 years of Dungeons & Dragons miniatures that were made by WotC and WizKids from 2003 through 2023. With this video, we finish up with the elemental planes with the plane of water. So grab your swim trunks and come on in, the water's fine. Frost salamanders are huge elemental beasts with 6 legs, reptilian bodies, and a long whip-like tail. In combat, they will rear up on their back 4 legs to rend and tear with their front teeth and claws, throwing in a tail whip for good measure. Surprisingly enough, they are fairly common in the more Arctic regions of the prime material plane. Our only Frost Salamander mini comes from 2020's Icewind Dale Rime of the Frost Maiden set. Caught in the attack pose described earlier, rising up on its back 4 feet to attack with tooth and claw, the blue-black body nicely fills the huge base. Note the shiny chest and underbelly, perhaps done with a pearl coating. White fangs and claws complete the look. Score: Paint 18, Pose 20, Playability 14, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 69. We've met the Jinn, Dao, and Ifrit. The Merit is their equivalent in the plane of water, and as you can see by these pics, have had quite a reimagining over the years. Beautiful in human form and vainglorious always, Merits consider themselves superior to all, even the other genies. As they are capable of sinking a 100-foot ship single-handedly, the best way to handle a Merit is via flattery. Fun fact, Merit in Arabic means rebellious. Keep that in mind when you're dealing with them. We get our first Merid Mini in 2007's Unhallowed set. To me, he seems small, especially when you consider how they are described in the books. That being said, the dark blue body has extremely well-defined musculature. Note the bunching of the muscles on the back and thighs. Pose catches him just prior to flinging his trident toward an enemy, left arm high while he sights along his outstretched right. Score: Paint 16, Pose 19, Playability 17, Pizzazz 16, for a score of 68. "13 years later, WizKids gives us this Merid Mini in 2020's Fangs and Talons set, and gee, can you spot the differences? With a face resembling a moray eel, complete with spine on the head and a fin down its back, this is most definitely an aquatic creature. With a translucent lower body transitioning into a richly garbed torso, this is the epitome of the new look Merids. Score: Paint 19, Pose 15, Playability 18, Pizzazz 16, for a score of 68. At least it was, until we get this Merid Mini 3 years later in the Season Shore set of 2023. First off, note the garb. He is dressed exactly like his predecessor, blue vest with red trim over a white shirt. Even the sash and the dagger on the belt match. The similarities end here, however. Physically larger, we get this version bursting from the waves with a trident held high above his head. I imagine this guy rising out of the sea before a passing merchant ship demanding tribute. Score: Paint 23, Pose 24, Playability 20, Pizzazz 24, for a score of 91. Water elementals are basically intelligent waves, and while they can exist outside of a body of water, they prefer to remain in their element, where they're virtually invisible before rising like a cresting wave to slam into their foes. Sometimes summoned by mariners to help with ship movement, which, like all elementals, they hate, they can easily turn on their summoner, capsizing small vessels and even damaging larger ones. We get this medium water elemental in WotC's second set, 2003's Dragon Eye. Deep blue with some white highlighting to emphasize the ripples across the body. The most noticeable trait is the dark eyes and mouth. There's a lot of expression there, mostly anger. The pose aligns with this, wave-like arms raised to either side of its head in preparation of violence. Pretty good first effort from Watsy. Score: Paint 15, Pose 19, Playability 15, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 66. Three years later, Watsy goes translucent in 2006's Blood War set. Now this is a water elemental. Rising up as a massive wave, the translucent blue plastic is liberally highlighted with white to simulate roiling water. At the crest of the wave, we see a face forming along with two hands, seemingly reaching for its foe. And I'm not sure, but if you look closely into the body of the elemental, is there a victim in there? It kind of looks like a kobold or lizard man skull. If so, very cool, Watsy. Score: 100. WizKids goes medium in their first water elemental in 2015's Elemental Evil set. Unlike the previous two, there are no discernible facial features on this creature, appearing as a swirling column of water with a couple tendrils that could loosely be considered arms. The swirling contours of the translucent blue plastic give the illusion of constant motion, which is nice, but in the battle of medium water elementals, I kind of prefer the Dragon Eye version. Score: Paint 14, Pose 13, Playability 13, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 55. Our final water elemental is from the set that gave us one of each, 2020's Fangs and Talons. Rising like a translucent blue ghost from the churning waves. Look at that face, it's definitely ghost-like. This elemental is coming after someone. Again, a great pose denotes movement, leaning forward within the wave with arms forming from the sides. The detailing of the ripples and eddies within the body enhances the illusion. Score: Paint 22, Pose 25, Playability 25, Pizzazz 23, for a score of 97. I've described what myrmidons are in each of the last three videos. Reader's Digest version: elementals trapped in magical armor to serve as warriors. Our first water myrmidon, called a Water Archon Shoal Reaver, comes from 2010's Lords of Madness set. Of all previous myrmidons, this one has by far the most armor, as well as the most specifically designed for the elemental entrapped, specifically in the fin-like appendages on the helmet, as well as being armed with a trident rather than a sword. Translucent blue plastic makes up the lower body and arms to complete the look. Score: Paint 16, Pose 17, Playability 15, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 67. We get WizKids' first water myrmidon in 2015's Rage of Demons set. Physically smaller and less imposing than the Watsy version, with plain silver armor with little to no detailing over a pale, translucent blue body. Also armed with a trident, this myrmidon seems to be more on guard duty than striding into battle. I believe you kids would call this mini mid. Score: Paint 12, Pose 13, Playability 15, Pizzazz 10, for a score of, 50. WizKids bounces back big time 8 years later with this water elemental myrmidon in 2023's Season Shore set. This guy is definitely in battle mode, flowing forward on a wave of water that comprises his lower body with a slight lean forward as it brings its trident to bear. The armor and helmet are highly stylized with intricate detailing front and back. Finally, note that the hands are also translucent blue. WizKids could have gone with gauntlets, but we get a nice detail instead. Score: Paint 17, Pose 24, Playability 18, Pizzazz 22, for a score of 81. Of the four elemental planes, the plane of water gets short shrift, creature-wise, as it has the fewest miniatures. However, it makes up for this with the largest number of para-elementals. Apparently, water and air mix well, but we get a water-earth mix as well. The Shral are an exceptionally evil elemental comprised of black-blue ice. Rudimental intelligence combined with insane strength makes for an unpredictable but dangerous foe, and it has a breath weapon too. Our only Shral mini comes from 2005's Angel Fire set, dark blue in color with some white highlighting to denote muscles. I particularly like the bony studs along the shoulders, heads, and biceps, as well as the very long talons. Moving carefully forward with a malicious grin, this guy is fixing to misbehave. Score: Paint 16, Pose 15, Playability 12, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 58. Schwingas are small, shy elementals native to the Faroon. They are extremely curious about humanoids, however, and will often follow a party to observe them. Mostly harmless, but mischievous. We get two Schwinga variants in 2020's Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden set, a common with a snowball and an uncommon with an icicle. Nothing special about either, although the translucent icicle is a nice touch. Ice blue body covered in light tan hair, fur, clothing, I'm not sure. I guess they could be a humorous distraction for a cold weather encounter, but otherwise not particularly useful. Score: Paint 10, Pose 9, Playability 4, Pizzazz 12 for cuteness, for a score of 35. Ice elementals first appeared in the OG Monster Manual 2 and are obviously composed of ice. Interestingly, they gain sustenance from draining heat and warmth, making them a threat should they come across a party, especially if they're sitting around a campfire. This Ice Elemental mini from 2007's Unhallowed set is what you'd expect. Translucent blue plastic liberally highlighted with white gives us a convincing icy appearance, with a pose open to interpretation. Score: Paint 17, Pose 13, Playability 14, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 59. Yes, para-elementals can be used to create Myrmidons too. Behold the Ice Archon from 2008's Dungeons of Dread set. The clear lower body looks like it's gliding along the ground, slightly leaning forward with its translucent blue hammer at the ready. Hammer matches the upper body and arms color-wise, while the dark blue armor with silver filigree is minimal compared to other Myrmidons. Score: Paint 19, Pose 20, Playability 14, Pizzazz 18, for a score of 71. Mephits. You know 'em, you hate 'em. This ice Mephit is from 2007's Night Below set. Translucent blue with a bit of dark wash for detailing. For a Mephit, it's not bad. Posed with wings fully spread and glancing to the side, unlike other Mephits, this one has a home gym. Again, not bad. Score: Paint 13, Pose 18, Playability 15, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 63. WizKids gives us a far more book-correct ice Mephit in, naturally enough, 2021 Snowbound set. The use of a clear stand has this mini airborne, but the issue I have with this mini is that it is the same clear plastic as the stand, making it harder to distinguish details. Looking closely reveals those details, which are pretty good. Just wish they'd used, say, a light blue translucent plastic to set them off a bit better. Score: Paint 9, Pose 13, Playability 15, Pizzazz 11, for a score of 48. Our final Mephit, is actually a mix of earth and water, the Mud Mephit. From 2018's Monster Manual 3 set, it's actually a different paint on the same pose as the Magma Mephit from the same set. In this case, just a monochrome muddy brown. Let's just get to the score. Paint 12, pose 12, playability 15, pizzazz 10 for a score of 49. Our final para-elemental mini is the Thunderblast Cyclone. It can kill you in multiple ways. By flinging you in the air with its wind gusts, shredding flesh from bone with sharp ice particles within the vortex, or just hit you with lightning. This mini, from 2008's Against the Giants set, is pretty impressive in its simplicity. Translucent plastic with white highlighting at the top, with a cheeky touch of a pair of white eyes staring out of the vortex. It's too cool not to use, so score is paint 20, pose 25, playability 18, pizzazz 25 for a score of 88. And with that, we are done with the creatures from the plane of water, and for that matter, all the elemental creatures. For our next set of videos, we'll be going off the reservation again, alphabetically wise, as we celebrate the upcoming Season of the Witch, All Hallows Eve, Samhain, you get the picture. Thanks as always for watching. Leave a comment below if you like, and I'll see you next time.